To continue on from being a sponge in the free energy boost video, I've since asked myself, why didn't my energy boost last? I think the answer lies in how we relate to the holistic nature of the world, not that we live in, but that we are an intrinsic part of. How many of us have learned that the quality of our relationships, for example, with family and friends, rises in direct proportion to how well we listen to, understand, and respect each other? It follows that the same holds true for our relationships with our own selves and the world in which we live. Consider that we and the world in whole and part are not only interrelated, interconnected, and interdependent. We are very much full of the essence of life, physically and energetically. Further, every being energetically contributes, consciously or unconsciously, to collective beings of the whole, like humanity, or in part like teams in sports, nations in the Olympics, or soldiers in war. Whenever I had a discussion in Japan about whaling, I was amused then, but not anymore in retrospect, by individuals there who referred to themselves as we Japanese. Did they feel that connection more clearly than I? In another sphere, Native American medicine men and women, for example, would more than imagine traveling down tree roots into another world populated by spiritual creatures or power animals, each of whom, I believe, were the collective embodiment of individual animal or other species who could impart wisdom and help when asked. I stayed in an old Navajo woman's desert home once, where the local medicine man held a peyote-fueled overnight ceremony to consult her ancestors about some urgent issues. I wonder, can the collective energy and life of our individual ancestors exist as beings like power animals? And what about the wind, waters, sun, planets, and stars? Putting that thought aside for a moment, while the Navajos had their ceremony, I was left alone in the old woman's house. I had always wanted to try peyote, and there was a bowl of its fruit on the table before me. I was sorely tempted to take just one. Surely they wouldn't miss it. I finally didn't, because stealing felt wrong. I've since realized that taking without asking and receiving without giving is a hollow, disrespectful physical and spiritual action. It sends out unintended but inevitable ripples within the law of cause and effect, often leaving a trail of bewildered and even hurt victims of our ignorance. Stealing is born of a learned habit, which is one of the characteristic failures of our civilization. We have watched throughout history as our civilization has explored, conquered, and taken from the world at the expense of the lands, cultures, and lives of indigenous peoples, who had a very close and respectful understanding of and relationship with the holistic natural world. Aboriginal people in Australia consider themselves respectful custodians of the land, not like the current owners and occupiers who mine and otherwise steal from the land without asking. I'd say we are now reaping our environmental rewards in a world that we share with so many. So, an important omission in being the sponge I described earlier was in not asking for and receiving the gift of energy with gratitude or acknowledgement of its source, which also applies in giving that gift to others, in sound attunement, for example. Anyway, Try adding that intent to your play with the living energy that abounds everywhere. Further, it strikes me that the same principles apply to how we relate to ourselves and the help we receive when asked from our higher selves. Wouldn't a hollow request without gratitude bring an equally hollow, if any, response? And, in that spirit, wouldn't it help to consider with whom we are speaking when we ask our higher selves, a religious being or even God, for help? I know especially in my newly awakened state, given my limitations, described in the Bite of Knowledge video, I need help virtually all the time. I was drawn to walk through the local cemetery recently and gave this some serious thought. From where does this wisdom and help come? Looking at all the headstones and thinking of my ancestors, I asked a question. Imagine if what I am as a human being in this lifetime is the culmination, collective spirit, and learning of all my ancestors combined. We all know, or at least have been taught, that they physically are gone, dead, and buried. Or are they? Some would say they are now just attributes, embodied in our strands of DNA. Throughout my life, I've woken from dreams in the dark and looked about me. I repeatedly saw a host of living, animated faces looking back at me, but never threatening. At first afraid, but now deeply curious, I wonder, what if they are individuals from amongst the collective spirit, knowledge, and wisdom of the umpteen lifetimes of my ancestry? Further, could that collective be accessible through our higher self, which is an integral part of our mind, body, and spirit? I think what makes us weak is how we treat each part of ourselves as something separate. Much as our civilization, nations, and businesses seek to win control and dominate by dividing and conquering all in their path. If so, our real challenge in this lifetime is to bring it all together. We and our ancestors have been here long enough. To start, I think we need to ask for help from our higher selves with full knowledge of the nature of this part of our whole being, because our egos, personalities, habit, and knowledge are holding us back. By asking for help, I mean ask that part and all parts of ourselves to join together with us to face the future, today, now. Imagine how our challenges will diminish and yield to each of us with the collective strength, wisdom, and living spirit of all of our ancestors behind and with us. That is what I mean when I say the dead are alive within us and knowingly rooting for us. Wouldn't our success with gratitude be theirs as well? But like this sponge has learned, the energy boost doesn't last when I take without asking and without putting my whole being and gratitude into the request. Perhaps like sticking our toes in the water, we are not quite ready to let go of our egos and allow our higher selves to merge, and stay with us for good. I am certain that this will soon come to pass in the twinkling of an eye for those who are ready. Just ask for and take that breath with gratitude, and it will happen much sooner than you think. Until then, or the next video, thanks.